The air in the Chicago Convention Center was thick with the smell of fresh paint, sawdust, and unbridled ambition. It was 3 days before the official opening of the Future Forward Expo, a sprawling showcase of innovation in urban development, green technology, and community leadership. The cavernous main hall was a chaotic symphony of shouted directions, whining power tools, and the rhythmic thump of carpenters hammering together exhibition booths. Amidst the controlled pandemonium, a small army of volunteers in sky-blue t-shirts was putting the finishing touches on the exhibit that had drawn the most pre-event buzz, the South Side Community Initiative. It was the passion project of a group of University of Chicago alumni designed to highlight sustainable urban farming and youth mentorship programs. At the center of their display was a stunning 12-foot-tall vertical garden, a living wall of lush ferns, vibrant moss, and leafy greens, lit by a series of grow lights that cast a soft, verdant glow. Leading the volunteer crew was a man named Kyle Rader. At 28, Kyle was a bundle of nervous energy, a recent MBA graduate who saw this expo as his personal launchpad. He was tall and lanky, with a shock of dark hair that constantly fell over his forehead, which he'd push back with a hand smudged with potting soil. He moved with a jerky, hurried intensity, checking his clipboard for the 5th time in 10 minutes, then darting over to straighten a brochure that was already perfectly aligned. "Jason, the QR codes on the handouts need to link to the new video, not the old sizzle reel," he called out to a guy on a ladder, his voice a little too high, a little too loud in the vast space. "And Maria, can you fluff the soil in the front planters? They look a little tired." His second-in-command, a pragmatic and unflappable woman named Chloe, placed a steadying hand on his arm. "Kyle, breathe. The living wall is a masterpiece. The banners are straight. The mayor's office has confirmed a visit. We're good." Kyle tried to smile, but his jaw was too tight. I know. It's just, this is it, Chloe. This is the one. We get this right, we get the funding, we get the attention. We can actually build the thing, not just talk about it on a foam core board." His obsession was the new urban farm they were proposing for a vacant lot on Garfield Boulevard. It was a beautiful, ambitious plan, and it lived or died on the connections made at this expo. He had poured his heart, his savings, and every waking hour for the last 6 months into this moment. The pressure was a physical weight on his chest. He glanced at his watch, 4:47 p.m. His eyes drifted, as they had been doing all afternoon, towards the VIP entrance on the far side of the hall. A constant stream of organizers and VIP liaisons moved in and out, their lanyards a riot of colors that denoted their level of access. Rumor had been swirling for days that there might be a surprise guest, a major draw to kick off the Expo's preview event for major donors and sponsors, someone who would bring a tsunami of media coverage with them. "Any word on the mystery guest for the donor mixer?" Kyle asked, trying to sound casual. "NDA City, not a peep. Probably some tech bro from the coast. They're all the same." She turned back to the vertical garden, misting the ferns with a spray bottle. Kyle nodded, but his curiosity, like everything else about him, was supercharged. He found himself drifting, pretending to check the electrical outlets on a nearby pillar, but his gaze was fixed on that VIP entrance. He saw a cluster of dark-suited Secret Service agents fan out, a sight so incongruous in the dusty, chaotic hall that it stopped him cold. They were polite but firm, redirecting a forklift driver and clearing a path. His heart gave a hard double thump. That wasn't for a tech bro. A moment later, a smaller, more fluid group emerged from the corridor, and at the center of her, walking with a grace that seemed to part the very air around her, was Michelle Obama. She was impeccable. She wore a simple, powerful sheath dress in a deep royal purple that seemed to absorb the harsh convention center light and radiate it back as warmth. Her hair was styled perfectly, and even from this distance, Kyle could see her famous, engaging smile as she listened intently to something the expo director was saying. She wasn't just a former First Lady, she was a South Side native, a product of the very community Kyle's project was designed to serve. Her presence here wasn't just a PR stunt, it felt like an anointing. Kyle felt the air leave his lungs. For a moment the noise of the hall faded to a dull hum. This was it. This was the catalytic event that could change everything. If he could just get her to see the vertical garden, to understand the project, to even just glance at their proposal. His mind, already operating on a hyperdrive of anxiety and ambition, went into overdrive. This was the unscripted moment. This was the chance. Formal channels were too slow, too filtered. You had to seize these things. You had to be bold.
He saw her route. She was being led on a pre-planned tour, but it would take her past the aisle near the initiative's booth, maybe 50 feet away. It was now or never. He forgot Chloe's advice to breathe. He forgot the protocols he'd been briefed on about VIP movements. He forgot everything except the goal. He looked back at his booth. The vertical garden, bathed in its soft light, looked hopeful and green. The brochures were stacked. The models were perfect. It was all ready for her. All it needed was her. His gaze swept the floor, looking for an opening. And that's when he saw it. A small, rectangular piece of thick, high-gloss cardstock lying on the polished concrete floor, about 20 feet from his booth. It was face down. He walked over and picked it up. It was a VIP pass, a special access, donor-level pass with a blank space for a name and a sleek, holographic stripe. It must have fallen off someone's lanyard in the controlled chaos of the advance team. He looked around. No one was rushing back to find it. No one was looking. It was just there, in his hand, an invisible key. A dangerous electric thought crackled through him. He didn't have to just wait and hope. He could go to her. He could put himself in her orbit, introduce himself, and guide her to the booth. It was a shortcut, a simple, harmless shortcut to success. He wasn't going to do anything wrong, he told himself. He just wanted to show her something amazing, something that would make her proud of her South Side roots. He deserved this chance. He'd worked for it. He slipped the lanyard over his neck. The plastic card felt cool and heavy against his chest. His hands were sweating, leaving damp marks on his khakis. He took a deep, shuddering breath and began to walk. He skirted the edge of the hall, trying to look purposeful, trying to look like he belonged. He merged with the periphery of the VIP group, a cluster of local politicians and expo board members. He kept his head down, his eyes on the back of the person in front of him. No one challenged him. The pass was his silent, fraudulent invitation. They moved through a curated section of the expo, pausing at a booth showcasing 3D printed affordable housing. Kyle hung back, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure the Secret Service agent with the coiled wire in his ear could hear it. He caught snatches of conversation. Michelle Obama's voice was lower and richer than he had imagined, a voice that commanded attention without raising its volume. She asked sharp, insightful questions about material costs and construction timelines. The group began to move again. They were heading down the main aisle, toward the South Side Community Initiative booth. Kyle's moment was arriving, but not in the way he had planned. He was now a stowaway in her orbit, not a welcoming host. He saw Chloe first. She was standing by the vertical garden, a welcoming smile on her face, a stack of the new, perfectly linked brochures in her hand. She was playing by the rules. Then Chloe's eyes widened. They moved past the former First Lady, past the expo director, and landed directly on Kyle. He saw the confusion morph into shock and then into a look of sheer, unadulterated horror. She mouthed his name, a silent, incredulous question. "Kyle, what are you doing?" He gave her a tiny, desperate shake of his head, a plea for her to stay silent, to trust him. The group stopped. They were right there. The vertical garden was a stunning backdrop. The expo director was beginning his spiel. "And this, Mrs. Obama, is a wonderful example of local grassroots innovation." She turned, her full attention now on the booth. Her eyes swept over the vertical garden, and a genuine, appreciative smile touched her lips. "This is beautiful, absolutely stunning work." This was his cue. This was the opening. But he wasn't where he was supposed to be. He was lurking on the fringes of her personal space, a man with a stolen pass and a wild look in his eyes. He saw a Secret Service agent's head swivel, his gaze suddenly sharp and focused on him. The agent didn't move, but his eyes locked on to Kyle with a chilling professional intensity. He was a deviation, an unaccounted-for variable. Panic began to claw its way up Kyle's throat. He should back away. He should just turn and walk, lost himself in the hall. But his feet were glued to the floor. He was frozen, caught in the gravitational pull of the moment and the terrifying stare of the agent. The expo director was still talking, and this, Mrs. Obama, is the lead visionary behind this project, a young man from the neighborhood, Kyle Rader. Kyle, would you like to come and say a few words? The director was looking around, a puzzled frown on his face. He was expecting Kyle to be front and center, but Kyle wasn't there. He was 10 feet behind the group, looking like a man who'd just seen a ghost. The director's eyes scanned the crowd, passed over Kyle, and then snapped back. He saw the stolen pass. He saw Kyle's ashen face. A flicker of understanding, then deep unease crossed his features.
Michelle Obama, sensing the sudden tension, turned slightly, following the director's bewildered gaze. Her eyes, warm and intelligent, landed on Kyle. They held no suspicion, not yet, only a calm, patient curiosity. She was waiting. And in that terrible, crystalline moment, Kyle knew he had a choice. He could slink away, a coward and a fraud, or he could step forward, speak his piece, and try to turn his catastrophic error in judgment into something worthwhile. The agent's hand drifted slightly closer to his jacket. Chloe looked like she was about to be sick. Kyle's mouth was dry as dust. He took a single, unsteady step forward. The agent's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Obama," Kyle croaked, his voice a stranger's. He cleared his throat, the sound harsh in the sudden quiet that had fallen over their immediate vicinity. The ambient noise of the hall seemed to have been sucked away into a vacuum. He took another step, and now he was at the edge of the group. The agent shifted, positioning himself more directly between Kyle and the former First Lady. But Mrs. Obama raised a subtle, graceful hand, a silent command for calm. Her eyes never left Kyle's. They weren't hostile, but they were assessing, measuring, seeing far more than he wanted her to see. "Go ahead," she said. Her voice was gentle, but it held an unmistakable note of steel. It was an invitation, but also a test. Up close, she was even more striking. The purple dress, the perfect posture, the aura of calm command. It was overwhelming. Kyle's mind was a whiteboard of frantic, half-formed thoughts. He pointed a trembling hand at the vertical garden. This is it," he stammered. The living wall. It's a prototype for a system we want to build on Garfield, to teach kids to grow food, to create jobs." He was a babbling mess. He was supposed to be eloquent, passionate, compelling. Instead, he was a poster child for nervous breakdown. He saw the expo director wince. He saw a city councilman he recognized raise a skeptical eyebrow. The beautiful, perfect moment was curdling into a public embarrassment. He had to fix it. He had to explain. He had to make her understand why he was here, why he deserved her attention. I needed you to see it," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "I knew you'd understand. You're from here. You know what this community needs. Not just handouts, but a hand up, a way to build something of their own. This farm could be that. It could be a beacon. And when I saw you were here, I had to take the chance. I couldn't just let you walk by. I had to be sure you saw it." He stopped, panting slightly. He had said the words, the right words, but they were wrapped in a delivery that screamed of desperation and poor judgment. He looked at her, searching for a sign, a hint of approval, a flicker of the connection he so desperately craved. Michelle Obama's expression was unreadable. She looked from Kyle's earnest, terrified face to the beautiful, verdant wall behind him. Then she looked down, her gaze falling on the stolen VIP pass hanging around his neck. She looked at it for a long, silent second. It was a simple piece of plastic, but in that moment it represented a profound breach of trust, a disregard for the simplest rules of respect and protocol. When her eyes met his again, the warmth was still there, but it was now tempered with something else, a deep, profound disappointment. It was the look of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating systems, respecting boundaries, and working within the lines to achieve extraordinary things. And here was a young man from her own community with a brilliant idea and a good heart, trying to take a shortcut that could have serious consequences, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. She took a small, deliberate step closer to him, closing the distance the agent had tried to maintain. The agent's jaw tightened, but he didn't intervene. "Kyle, right?" she said, her voice soft but clear. He could only nod, his throat too tight for words. "That is a beautiful idea," she said, gesturing towards the garden. "Truly, it's innovative, it's sustainable, and it's rooted in community. The kind of thinking we need more of." A fragile, foolish hope flickered in Kyle's chest. She liked it. She understood. Maybe it was
She
going to be
continued,
okay.
her voice dropping even lower so that only he and perhaps the closest agent could hear. "But I have to ask you, and I want you to really think about your answer. If you have to cheat to get me to look at something this good, how good can it really be?" The question hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't accusatory. It was a quiet, surgical strike at the very core of his actions. It bypassed his excuses and his ambition and went straight to the heart of his flawed logic. He opened his mouth to protest, to explain that it wasn't cheating, it was just seizing an opportunity. But the words died in his throat, because he knew she was right. He had stolen a key to a door that, if his project was as worthy as he believed, should have opened for him on its own merit. The silence that followed her question was absolute. He could feel the weight of a dozen important stares on his back. Chloe looked like she was fighting back tears. The expo director was mentally composing a strongly worded email. And Kyle just stood there, stripped bare, holding a stolen pass that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Then, the seconds later he would regret it for the rest of his life, he spoke. I wasn't trying to cheat," he whispered, the lie sounding pathetic even to his own ears. "I just wanted to make sure." He saw the final shudder come down behind her eyes. It wasn't anger, it was something worse, a dismissal. She had given him a chance to own his mistake, to show the character that building a community project really required, and he had failed. She gave him a small, sad, and utterly final smile. "I understand," she said, and she did. That was the worst part. She understood exactly what he had done, and why, and what it said about him. She turned her back to him, just like that. The conversation was over. She redirected her full, radiant attention back to the expo director, her voice warm and professional once more. "Now, you were telling me about the irrigation system for this wall. It's remarkable how lush it is." The group, as one, closed ranks around her. The agent gave Kyle one last cold look that clearly said, "You are invisible now. Stay that way." The bubble of importance, access, and grace moved on, drifting towards the next booth, leaving Kyle standing alone on the cold concrete floor. The noise of the hall rushed back in, a mocking wave of sound. Chloe stared at him for a moment, her face a mixture of pity and anger, then turned away to busy herself with the brochures.
The volunteers in the sky-blue shirts pretended they hadn't seen anything, their sudden intense focus on the plants a painful lie. Kyle stood there, rooted to the spot. The stolen pass hung around his neck, a scarlet letter. He looked at his beautiful vertical garden, the dream he had nurtured for so long. It was still beautiful, the idea was still good, but he felt a profound and nauseating shift inside him. He had taken that beautiful, worthy thing and smeared it with his own impulsive, dishonest act. He had wanted her to see the project, and she had, but she hadn't seen a visionary. She had seen a man willing to cut corners, a man who didn't trust his own work to stand on its own 2 feet. In his desperate grab for her approval, he had guaranteed he would never have it. He had wanted to make an impression, and he had, just not the one he had spent 6 months killing himself to create. He finally reached up and pulled the lanyard from his neck. The plastic card felt cheap and flimsy now. He looked at it, then across the hall at the retreating figure in purple, surrounded by her protective detail, already 100 miles away from him. The seconds had passed, and he regretted it. Every single one of them. The regret was a cold, hard stone in his gut. A feeling he knew would be there tomorrow and next week, and for every single day he thought back to the moment he had the world's attention and traded it for a shortcut. The expo hadn't even officially opened, and for Kyle Rader, it was already over.